I'm Julie Barkey with this Senate update. The Minnesota Family Investment Program was created 29 years ago, designed to provide financial assistance to struggling working families. Now, in that time, the monthly grants have never increased. A proposal heard Wednesday morning in the Senate Health and Human Services Finance Division would double the current monthly payments of $532. Now, another version of this bill was heard earlier that would increase the monthly payments by $100 a month. That is in line with the governor's budget. However, Senator Chris Eaton proposed this on Wednesday morning to the committee. Here's some testimony from her bill.
The Children's Defense Fund Leave No Child Behind mission is to ensure every child a healthy start, a head start, a fair start, a safe start, and a moral start in life. One of the most significant ways we can ensure children have a solid foundation in life is to make sure that their families are economically secure. Unfortunately, nearly 180,000 Minnesota children live in poverty. 70,000 children receive MFIP. This means that 7 out of 10 MFIP recipients are children. The current cash grant leaves a family of 3 at 32% of the federal poverty guidelines. Even including the food portion, that family of 3 would still be left at 58% of poverty. As this committee knows, poverty is correlated with poor childhood and adulthood outcomes. However, it's not solely poverty or the degree of poverty that matters for child outcomes, but when during childhood that poverty occurs. Rapid and critical brain development occurs during early childhood. Around half of children receiving MFIP are young children. Poverty during that time period is especially harmful for outcomes related to cognitive development and achievement skills. From the little data we have on the 35,000 young children receiving MFIP assistance every month, we know they're not doing well. In fact, 61% screened as part of a pilot project scored positive for possible cognitive, emotional, or behavioral delays. But when we increase family income, we improve child outcomes. For example, a 2011 Brookings study examining the effects of family income on school readiness found that an additional $1,000 of average annual family income throughout early childhood results in higher reading and math scores for children in low-income families. Increasing the cash grant is a long overdue investment in the health and well-being of our state's children, and we ask legislators to take action this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. And then you have a couple of additional testifiers, looks like. Ms. Misrata Phillips, welcome to the committee. State your name for the record.
Mr. Chair, committee members, I'm Sue Watlow Phillips. I'm the Executive Director of MICA, the Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing, and President and CEO of Integrated Community Solutions. We believe very strongly that you love your neighbor as yourself. And who is our neighbor? Everyone in this room, including our dear friends that are on MFIP. And that we need to treat people the way that we would want to be treated. And I think this bill really talks with people about what do they need. Now, while Senator Hayden's bill was great at adding an additional $100, and we've already added $105 that'll come into a housing voucher starting July 1. Again, the sheet that I handed out is that people nowhere on MFIP can afford housing in our state. And if you still don't have if you don't have the piece where you have it by county, I have some additional copies of that. We do know that 36,000 people or 13,000 families applied for Section 8 HRA when that was opened up again, and only for just to get on the waiting list. We know that if people have to go into shelter, it costs us an incredible amount of money. It'll cost between $4,000 and $5,000 a month to have a family in shelter. So last time that I testified, we had 163 families on MFIP in Hennepin County shelters. Last night we had 187. So that means this month we will spend between $748,000 and $935,000 on those 187 families in shelter. You might as well double that, because we're going to have to then pay a double damage deposit to get them out of shelter. We're going to have rapid rehousing workers help them get out of shelter into housing, if they can even find housing, because their rental record has now been damaged by losing their housing, and so has their credit record. So we're continuing to put people at a further and further behind when we're supposed to be trying to invest in our families. Now, as a retired psychologist, having run a program for 30 years, Elam Transitional Housing, and working with people that experience homelessness, one of the things I always told my staff is, If people stop working their plan and stop doing their job training or stop going to school, the first thing you look at under Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, are they having problems with making their rent and utilities? Are they having problems with food? Are they having problems with getting clothing for their kids to go to school? And that's what's happening to our families on MFIP, is that we have great services that we're funding with the TANF dollars. But people, if they're not stable in housing, can't use those services because they're worried every day about where they're going to live and if they're going to be able to keep a roof over their head. So in conclusion, as I said last meeting, just think about sending your child or your grandchild off to college or off to some training. So you're sending them off, they've got a scholarship, or maybe you have the resources to help them pay for their school, or they've got a good student loan to pay for their tuition. But they don't have enough money for housing. They're not going to do well in school. And that's exactly what we're doing with our MFIP families. We've got great services, but we need to have them have enough resources to pay for their housing. So it's long overdue. It's time to double the MFIP grants now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watlaw Phillips. Ms. Galboy, welcome to the committee. State your name for the record. Try to keep it to 2, maybe 3 minutes if you could.
Sure. It'll even be briefer because I have talked to this committee a couple of times on this issue. Over the years, many times. My name is Lyndon Galboy. I'm with the Welfare Rights Committee, and I'm really, really happy that you're hearing this much-needed bill to double the grants. Even if this bill passed by itself, it would not represent keeping up with the cost of living since 1986. The cost of living since 1986 has more than doubled, and the grants have not gone up. So we know this bill will, quote-unquote, cost a lot. We consider it's paying back a lot. It's paying back years and years and years of theft. And then in this year of surplus, this is the inflation we should be looking at. We should be looking at the people who are homeless, the people who are hungry, the children who are damaged because of the policies of this state. So we urge you to pass this bill through this committee. We urge you to go to the leadership in the House and the Senate and in the executive branch and say we need to double the grants, we need to get Minnesota back on track, and we need Minnesota to be fair again. Thank you.
I do need to say that in Section 5, the appropriation is from the TANF block grant, and currently the TANF fund is 0, so this would have to be a general fund appropriation, and the construct of it would need to be worked on. Were we able to pick it up? But we can work on that over time. We don't have to make any adjustment today.
Why there is a 0 balance in the TANF fund?
The simple answer given was because we've spent it.
It's all gone.
Oh, it's all gone.
On what?
We did pass out after the last hearing, you know, that rather detailed sheet that we worked on in the task force that kind of listed where all of the TANF funds go. I do know that the tax committee has before them a proposal to free up a significant portion of the TANF funds by picking up the working family tax credit with general fund. I personally am hopeful they're able to find a way to do that. If the tax committee got a target like the House did, I mean, I think that it'd be pretty easy to accomplish. Not sure that's going to come to pass in the Senate, but hopefully they'll be able to free up some TANF by at least that mechanism, and if we can find other ways to backfill current TANF expenditures, then we can use TANF funds to increase the grant, and that would be in line with the recommendations that came out of the task force that you and I served on, Senator Rosen.
Prosperity for All is comprised of over 70 organizations that support an increase to the MFIP cash grant. Many of these organizations work with the 28,000 families on MFIP and see the immense need for a cash grant increase to accommodate rising costs in housing, transportation, and other basic needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to offer testimony either in support or opposition to Senate File 432? Welcome to the committee. Please keep your comments brief.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Darnella Wade. I'm also from the Welfare Rights Committee. Thanks for inviting me to testify in favor of Senate File 432. To double the grant to Minnesota would be a powerful and progressive move for the people of Minnesota. the people that consist of the children of Minnesota. 29 years is a long time to fall behind the cost of living. Our country is experiencing hardship, but Minnesota is in a surplus. Just doubling the grant to Minnesota could allow a family to pay the monthly rent at best. The number of women working in Minnesota supersedes the percentage of women working nationwide. These laws have been overlooked for an extensive amount of time, and now it has become neglect on the cares and quality of the lives of 70,000 children in Minnesota that live here in extreme poverty currently. We ask for you to contribute back into the working class families with dependent children in Minnesota, and not only are they our future, but they're your future. Thanks.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there any other testimony from the public? Seeing none, any other questions from members? Senator Eaton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to reiterate a bit of the outrage over where we're at with the TANF grant. I too am baffled why it's at zero balance. It's funded for this purpose to the states. Used to be aid for dependent children. And the fact that we've balanced our budget by funding all of our social programs through the TANF grant once we were given the ability to use it for whatever we wanted, I think does not speak well of Minnesota. We need to find the funding for these other programs, and we need to give these children a good start in life.